Okay, today's daf is Shabbat Daf Mem Vav. We have a bunch of sponsors. This week's shiurim are sponsored by Eva Schwartz in memory of her mother, Hilda Schwartz, Zichronah Livracha, who's still a daily inspiration to her family. Today's shiur specifically is sponsored by Carolyn Ben Ari in memory of her father, Ivor Rhodes, Yisrael Ben Meir Basara, Zichronah Livracha, in his 10th year at site, and by Yael Asher in memory of Miriam Pasya Flesh Bat Malka, Zichronah Livracha, and is today's Yom HaShoah in memory of all those who perished in the Holocaust. We're going to start now with, I'll just review a little bit from yesterday's daf. We ended with a bit of a strange back and forth with Abai and Rav Yosef, which we'll see gets even a little bit stranger. What happened was Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yosef, came and said that Rav Yochanan paskin like Rav Yehuda. I'll just remind you, we had a whole debate about what Rabbi Yehuda versus Shmuel thinks regarding when Rabbi Shimon would actually hold muktzah. If you remember yesterday, there was a lot of discussion about the fact that that Rabbi Shimon, lately muktzah, he doesn't have muktzah. On the other hand, we come to see all these different scenarios and debates regarding when Rabbi Shimon would actually hold muktzah. So then Rabbi Yitzchak, so we had Rabbi Bar Bar Chana who came and said that Rabbi Yochanan said that the rabbis in the yeshiva said that we paskin like Rabbi Shimon. And then came Rabbi Yitzchak who said, no, Rabbi Yochanan actually paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. And it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who holds like Rabbi Shimon. So then Rabbi Yosef said, oh, so then we must have misunderstood Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. And when he said that Rabbi Yochanan said, the rabbi said this, well, the rabbi said we hold like Rabbi Shimon, but Rabbi Yochanan didn't actually agree with him. And in fact, that seems to be the approach of the Gemara from here on in, that Rabbi Yochanan actually holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Then we had that Abaye said to Rabbi Yosef, it sounds like you had this revelation when you heard Rabbi Yitzchak, and that really you didn't know beforehand that Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Yehuda. But why not? We had this story where Rabbi Abi and Rabbi Asi were in the house of Rabbi Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Asi were in the house of Rabbi Abba, and this menorah fell on the cloak of Rabbi Asi, and he didn't move it. So can't you realize from there that he paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? To that, Rabbi Yosef, and I'm going through this very carefully because otherwise we could get lost in the back and forth. I want to make it very clear what happens at this point. So Rabbi Yosef says, no, that's for a different reason. And he quotes a machlok of Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish about this, and about a menorah, okay, which is a candelabra, and he basically says, look, Rish Lakish said if you hold it in one hand, then you can carry it, but if it's a candelabra that can only be held in two hands, you can't carry it, and Rabbi Yochanan says, doesn't matter, one hand, two hands, you can't carry this, and then Rabbi Yosef explained why he and Rabbi hold the reason is, and this is where it's going to get a little complicated, they said the reason is because it's got a kavua makom. Generally, a candelabra is placed in a certain place. If it's placed in a particular place, well, then we're going to assume that once it's put in that particular place, so you're not planning to move it anymore. I'll give you an example. So pictures on a wall or magnets on a refrigerator, you wouldn't really think they're muktzah, but they're actually muktzah because they have a designated spot and you don't generally move them from there. Okay, so therefore, that's what Rav Yosef says. So comes Abaye and he disagrees with Rav Yosef. Now this is why I want you to be careful about following the flow. In the end, we're right that the reason, we're going to basically say whether you're Rav Yosef or you're Abaye, even though Abaye originally said to Rav Yosef, wouldn't you have known from this story, Abaye is going to end up agreeing with Rav Yosef that you're right, the story doesn't prove that since Rabbi Asi, who was Rabbi Yochanan's student, and he did the following, and he didn't move the menorah, it's not because of his connection to Rabbi Yehuda's approach about muktzah. Okay, but it's going to be Rabbi Yosef and Abaye are going to say for a different reason. So Rabbi Yosef says the reason is even Rabbi Shimon will agree in that case because Adam Kovei Lo Makom, and because it has its own unique spot, therefore it doesn't get moved. But Amalei Abaye the Rabbi Yosef, he doesn't like this reason. He says, but we have this canopy tent that they would make for grooms, or maybe just for weddings in general. That also we're going to see it has a particular place. You put it down, you kind of pitch it. It's kind of tent-like, although we'll see it's not exactly tent-like. You pitch it in a particular place, and yet we're going to see, Amar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Chia, Kilat chatanim mutar lenatota umutar leparka. You can move it, you can put it up, and you can take it down on Shabbat. Now, what's the relevance here? Well, if you could take it down on Shabbat, it's obviously not muktzah, even though you put it up and you put it in a particular place. So you see here that even something that has a place where we generally place it and we don't usually move it, it's not muktzah, otherwise you wouldn't be allowed to take this down. Now, by the way, why can you build this and take it down? Isn't it binyan and stira and, building something, taking something apart? Well, the reason is it's different here because they say, number one, the kilat chatanim, in order for something to be considered a tent that's forbidden to build on Shabbat, it has to have a roof that's a tefach at the top. This kilat chatanim is built kind of like a V at the top. So it doesn't actually have a roof of a tefach. It's this, let's say sheet that goes over. It's kind of like with the dead people when they had the dead person in the middle and they made this little canopy. So it's kind of like that. It doesn't have a tefach at the top, and therefore you can build it. But again, building's not our issue, so let's move on. So the main point he says is, look, you see that if you're kavua lo makom, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, that it's muktzah. So, Ela Amar Abaye, so now Abaye, and this is why I wanted you to be clear on this, Abaye in the end is going to give a different explanation for the menorah and why Rabbi Asi didn't move it, which even though Abaye originally thought that doesn't that prove that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda, in the end, he's going to agree with Rav Yosef that story doesn't prove anything. In Rav Yosef's world, it doesn't prove anything because even Rabbi Shimon, according to Rav Yosef, would think that this is muktzah because it's got a designated place. According to Abaye, it's actually going to have nothing to do with muktzah at all. And that's not why it was forbidden, why he didn't move it. He didn't move it for a different reason. So Ela Amar Abaye, so he kind of agrees with Rav Yosef that the story doesn't prove anything, but he has a different approach as to what the issue with the story was. B'shal chuliot, it was a candelabra that came apart. Okay, that's right. We've seen candelabras like this. I have one where the pieces kind of hook into each other and then they easily come apart. What's the issue? Well, the issue is if it comes apart, we don't want you to move it on Shabbat because it might break and then you might actually put it together. And putting it together, now mine actually fits in together very easily. Here I assume they're talking about something that's a little more complicated to put the pieces back together. And because it's made up of these parts, we're worried we don't want you to move it on Shabbat. You might come to be what we call mitaken kli. You're going to fix the utensil that broke, and then you're going to be chayav because of the malacha of makeh b'patish, which means, right, giving something the final blow, which means that it has nothing to do with muktzah, why he didn't move this. It all had to do with, he was worried that he might end up breaking the kli, and because of that, he didn't move it. Okay? Whole separate issue. So now the Gemara is going to question. Well, then we don't understand if it was made up of these parts. If you remember, let's go back to the machloket. Rish Lakish said, depends on whether it's a menorah that you carry in one hand or a menorah that you carry in two hands. Rabbi Yochanan said, no matter what, it's asur. So Rabbi Yochanan makes a lot of sense because it's in parts. It might break. But Rish Lakish doesn't make any sense. Why did he allow it if it's small? So they say, okay, it can't be chuliot. So what did he mean when he said chuliot? My chuliot, ke'ein chuliot. It's like chuliot. What does that mean? Di'it bechidke. It has little indentations which make it look like it's made of parts. Now, why should that be relevant? Well, this is all in the world of rabbis. If something looks like something else and the other item that it looks like is problematic, then we're going to forbid this item because if we don't forbid this, people might think if they see you carrying, again, this you can see what it looks like, they see you carrying this candelabra that has these indentations, which make it look like it's made of parts. You might come to think that you can carry one that's not made of parts, that is made of parts, actually. Okay, so this one isn't made of parts, but you might come to carry one that is made of parts. So that's what we're going to see here, Hilkach. Again, we're still going to have to explain, though, why does Rish Lakish permit it if it's small? So that's going to be left to explain, but now they're going to say like this. Hilkach, therefore, chuliot, if it's made of chuliot, actually made of parts, ben gdola, ben ktana, asura l'taltala. Okay, we're on a total tangent right now, just reminding you, right? This was all just to explain that story of Rav Asi and what it's doing here, and how it has nothing to do with muktzah. So we're going to say, if it's made of parts really that go in and out of each other, well, then it doesn't matter what the size is. Even Rish Lakish is going to say, even if it can be held only in one hand, it's still going to be forbidden l'taltala because it might fall apart and then you'll end up you'll end up putting it together. But Gdola, Nami de eat bechitke, but if you have a large one and it has these indentations and looks like it's Chuliot, Gzera atu Gdola. Then the Gzera atu Gdola de Chuliot. Then we're going to make a Gzera. We're going to say, in case you would come to do this with a large one, therefore this is forbidden. Ki pligi biktana de eat bechitke. But the machloket is all about a small candelabra that has these indentations. Mar savar gazlinan. Umar Savar lo gazlinan. Rish Lakish says we don't make a gzera in this case, and Rabbi Yochanan says we do. Now, it's not really clear why there's this difference between a small one and a large one. So either you say it's very uncommon to have a candelabra made of chuliot that's small, and therefore we don't make gzerot, we don't make these ordinances just in case you'll come to do something when it's a very uncommon case. That seems to be the most logical explanation. I think I saw something else. Right, Rashi says, everybody knows it's not made of chuliot if it's small. It's unclear exactly why there's difference. Like the Gemara kind of states it as if it's obvious, but it's not necessarily so obvious. Okay, so that was, again, as I said, that was all an aside to explain why when Rabbi Yosef heard Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yitzchak said that Rabbi Yochanan paskins that way, he was kind of surprised and didn't realize before, and the menorah story wasn't an indication. Okay, because the menorah story, like we said, either it's muktzah, but even Rabbi Shimon would hold muktzah, because again, we keep describing that Rabbi Shimon does hold muktzah in certain scenarios, or because it had nothing to do with this, it was ke'ein chuliot, it looked like chuliot, and that was the issue. And then it has to do nothing with muktzah at all, has to do with mitakein kli, that you might come to fix the utensil, and that's the separate issue. Okay, now the Gemara is going to go back to this Psikat Halacha, this the fact that Rabbi Yitzchak told us that Rabbi Yochanan paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. We're now going to question this from another place. Umi amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi, could he really paskin like Rabbi Yehuda and not Rabbi Shimon? V'ha amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha kistam mishnah. Doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say we paskin like the regular? If you have a mishnah without any name, it's not attributed to any particular person. Rabbi Yochanan's approach, and this comes up all over, is that we paskin that way. Well, why is that relevant? If you remember, we saw a few dapim ago, Mem Daled, what did we see? We saw a mishnah in Kalim about the muchni. Remember those wheels on the, right? I described it like the connects, right? The wheels on the wagon. So if you remember, when we struggled with Rabbi Paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, and we said, what about this mishnah? We said, oh, that mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. So if that mishnah is Rabbi Shimon and it's a stam mishnah, shouldn't Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Shimon? So we're going to read the mishnah again. Utznan, muchni shela. If you remember, we said there were a lot of different interpretations, how to understand all the parts of this. Even what a muchni is, there's different interpretations. Bisman she nishmeted, if it comes easily in and out, and chiborla, it's not considered connected to the wagon. For purposes of tum and tara, if the muchni becomes tamei, it doesn't mean the wagon is. If the wagon does, it doesn't mean the muchni is. Ve'ein imdeded ima, it's not measured along with it to figure out, is the wagon too large to be able to be susceptible to impurities. Ve'ein matzelet ima ba'oel hamet, we said there were different interpretations, but we'll say that the wagon itself, if there's things in the wagon and it goes over a dead body, and the wagon serves as a barrier between the tumah and nothing inside the wagon is tameh. But if there's things hanging off of it or in the muchni or on the muchni, like maybe the board that connects the two wheels, well, that's going to be a separate thing, and that will become impure. And here's the important line: Ve'ein gorerin ota b'Shabbat b'zman sheyesh aleh ma'ot. You can't carry it on Shabbat when there's money on it. And what was the inference we made from there? Ha'ein aleh ma'ot. If there's no money on there right now, it's sharia, it's permitted. And here's the jump they make. Even if they were there when Shabbat started, it seems to be, no, it never says this in the Mishnah. And that's going to be the important part for our answer. Notice it never really says that. It's just implied. What's implied is only if the money's on it now, but not if there's no money on it right now and there was 5 minutes ago, or even if there was Ben Hashmashot in the beginning of Shabbat, and that's the whole approach of certainly Rabbi Meir, who says it explicitly, and we assumed at a certain point that Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Meir about this, that once something is on there, all of Ben Hashmashot, the twilight time period, then that's going to determine its status for all of Shabbat. We're going to assume that's set aside for Shabbat, and you can't use it. So it seems like this Mishnah paskins like Rabbi Shimon. So I'm a Rabbi Zera, and again, then if Rabbi Yochanan says we hold like any stam Mishnah, well then we should basically say that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Shimon. So how could he hold like Rabbi Yehuda? So I'm a Rabbi Zera, Tehei Mishnatenu shelo hayu aleh ma'ot kol ben hashmashot. Why don't we just explain that the Mishnah is referring to a case? What it's implying is this: only when there's money on it now, but not if there was money on it, let's say 5 minutes ago, but it wasn't implying what if there was money ben hashmashot. It wasn't implying anything about if there was money ben hashmashot. If there was money ben hashmashot in the twilight time period, then yes, it would also be. It's just the Mishnah wasn't referring to that. The Mishnah said if there's money on it now, okay, but let's say the money's on it and then you take the money off, or the money falls off, then you can move it as long as there was no money there ben hashmashot. If there was money ben hashmashot, well then it would be usher also. Because even Rabbi Yehuda would say, right, if let's say Shabbat morning, somehow somebody puts money on it, that's not going to forbid it for all of Shabbat, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it all goes by what it was like in the beginning of Shabbat. So you could just say that this Mishnah is referring to a case where there wasn't money ben hashmashot, and then it depends whether the money's on it right now or if the money's off, you can move it. Okay. So, and why are we going to explain the Mishnah this way? It comes from Rabbi Zeir, and he's very honest about it. Shelo lishbor dvarav shel Rabbi Yochanan. In order not to have a problem and a conflict with Rabbi Yochanan, we'll just assume that you can't imply that from the Mishnah. That the Mishnah is not referring to if the money had been on it actually ben hashmashot. Okay, it's a bit of a stretch, but he's agreeing it's a bit of a stretch because he really wants to resolve Rabbi Yochanan and not to have this contradiction. Also, you know, he does say halacha kistam mishnah. It's a general rule. General rules we always know sometimes need to be broken. So even though he says always goes by stam mishnah, there's tons of stam mishnahs, and maybe once in a while it doesn't work out. However, this question does come up time and time again, where they say, how could Rabbi Yochanan say this if the Stam Mishnah says that? And every time they try to come up with an answer. So there are lots of exceptions, which maybe creates a bit, you know, if you look at them as a whole, there really would be a bit of an issue. So each one they answer individually. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Pamachat. Now we're going to see a psikat halacha of Rebbe, which we're not going to really understand, and in fact we won't really come to a conclusion about it. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Pamachat halach Rebbe l'Diosva. He went to a place called Diosva. Behora b'menorah Rabbi Shimon ben Ner. And he taught a halacha about a menorah, a candelabra, like Rabbi Shimon in a candle. Now remember, the ner is not exactly a candle, it's a lamp. Held like him about a lamp full of oil. Now we always said a candelabra, we're assuming is made out of metal. And it usually doesn't have the same halacha as the ner. Remember, Rabbi Shimon says that a ner is not an issue, but because it's not disgusting, we don't care. We assume you might be using it for something. So the assumption is that if he held like menorah, like Rabbi Shimon in ner, that means he held that a menorah was allowed. So Ibailu. So the Gemara asks, Horeh b'menorah Rabbi Shimon b'ner lehetera. Does he mean he paskined in the menorah case like Rabbi Shimon in the ner, meaning he allowed a menorah to be carried? O Dilma Horeh b'menorah leisura u'Rabbi Shimon b'ner lehetera. Or maybe he held in a candelabra case that it was forbidden, and Rabbi Shimon b'ner lehetera. In other words, this is like we saw yesterday. Maybe there's a vav missing in that sentence. Horeh b'menorah Rabbi Shimon b'ner lehetera. In other words, and then it's missing. What did he teach about a menorah? Maybe he taught that a menorah was forbidden, and maybe he held, and then what would be forbidden about a menorah? Well, we saw the whole, that's how we started today, about maybe it was a menorah with these indentations, and he was machmir there. And maybe that's the issue. Or maybe he was mekel there. He was lenient there. And that's exactly what we're struggling to figure out. And so we don't really know what this means. And the Gemara says, teku. We really don't know. Okay, so Rabbi Shua ben Levi kind of brought this psikah of Rebbe, but we say that we really don't know what it means. Rav Malkiah, you can see how much they're struggling to figure out to what extent do we rule muktzah in all these various cases. Rav Malkiah ikla lebei Rabbi Simlai. Rav Malkiah came to the house of Rabbi Simlai, vitiltel shraga, and he carried a candle, right? Again, a lamp full of oil. Ve'ikpid Rabbi Simlai. Rabbi Simlai got very angry with him. What do you see here? You see, and we're going to see this in a few stories, Rav Malkia seemed to have held like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Simlai held like Rabbi Yehuda, and he got upset that he was doing, right, like Rabbi Shimon in his house. Rabbi Yossi Galila, Rabbi Yossi from the Galil, Ikla la'atre to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. He came to the city of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Tiltel Shraga, same thing. He carried this candle, this lamp, as Rabbi Shimon holds. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina got very angry with him. Okay, we're going to see a lot of cases today of rabbis getting angry at other rabbis for doing various things. In this case, it's basically for poskening differently than they do. Okay? You can see how it a little bit undermines their approach when, you know, if you're the rabbi and you say, this doesn't go, this doesn't fly, and then someone comes into your house or into your city where you're the one who's ruling for people and starts doing things against what you say. And this is always a little dangerous when you come to a new city. You kind of have to know the lay of the land. And now we saw two stories where people got angry. Now we're going to see a story where somebody took this very seriously. Rabbi Avahu, who was a student both of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and of Rabbi Yochanan. Now, if you remember, we saw there was a difference in the psika of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi held like Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Yehuda. So what did he do? He was very smart. Ki ikla la'atri to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi having metaltal shraga. He would do tiltul, but when he ikla la'atri to Rabbi Yochanan, who held you can't do this, lo having metaltal shraga. So he wouldn't do it. So the Gemara says right away, Manavshach, we don't understand, even though it's pretty clear, but they're kind of raising the question to get to the answer. Rabbi Yehuda Svirale, Rabbi Yehuda. Either he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, in which case he couldn't have carried it when he was with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and Rabbi Shimon Svirale, if he held like Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon, he should have held like Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara says, La'olam Rabbi Shimon Svirale. Really, he held like Rabbi Shimon, and as we said before, Umishum Fodo de Rabbi Yochanan, who's a lo Hava Abi. Right? He was respectful of Rabbi Yochanan when he was in the place of Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shraga de Mishka Shari L'Tiltula, de Nefta Asur L'Tiltula. Comes Rabbi Yehuda and he says, even according to Rabbi Shimon, again, we're going to see that Rabbi Shimon holds muktzah in certain scenarios. If you have a candle with a lamp with oil in it, so that is allowed because of Rabbi Shimon. But de Nefta, if you remember, we talked about this nafta, that this is a disgusting smell. It came up in the last parak that you can't use this for lighting candles. But let's say somebody did, and there was a candle lit with neft. So, asur l'taltala, since the smell is disgusting. Okay, so let's imagine the scenario. You have a lamp full of regular oil. Now, even though this lamp, it's made of earthenware, the fire goes out. So Rabbi Shimon says, look, you might use it. It might be you don't want to touch it and use it for anything else because it's full of oil, but you might want to put oil in it and put some oil on your body or use oil for something else. You might reuse it for oil. But the one that's made of nafta is disgusting. It has a terrible smell. It's not just that it's slimy, but it has an awful smell. No one's going to use that for anything. You're not going to put oil on your body if the utensil is full of this disgusting, smelly, this horrible smell. So basically he says, therefore, even Rabbi Shimon will say that is forbidden. Rabbi Yosef D'Amrei Travayu, but Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef disagree. They say, Dinafta Nami Shari L'Tiltul. Also, this is forbidden. This is also permitted. Okay, now we're not sure why. We're going to ignore the parentheses for right now because some people take it out, and we're only going to see it when we read this story. So hold off. So here's an interesting story. We talked about stories of rabbis getting upset and what they do when they get upset. So we didn't really see their reactions when they got upset. Here we're going to see an interesting reaction to getting upset at somebody. And we'll see maybe he was actually justified in getting upset. You might be upset too if this happened to you. Rav Avia ikla lebei Rava. So Rav Avia comes to Rava's house. Hava me'isan beikare betina. His feet were all dirty. Okay, they were full of dirt, full of and what's the translation of tina? 1 second. I think it's like soot or cement or what?
Clay.
Clay. That's what it is. Okay, clay. Thank you. So it's full of clay, and his feet were full of clay. And what does he do? He puts his feet, ative apuria kamei de Rava. He puts his feet on Rava's bed in front of Rava. Okay, you see here how the bed was used for all different things, right? It's likely wasn't his bedroom. But he puts his feet on Rava's bed that are full of clay. Okay, that's pretty unpleasant, right? Not the nicest thing to do. Ikpid Rava. So Rava got upset. But now, what did he do when he got upset? So he decides, I'm going to embarrass him. How am I going to embarrass him? I'm going to ask him a quite difficult question that I'm sure he's not going to know the answer to. And then he won't be able to answer the question and he'll be embarrassed. So, by Litzire. So he wanted to kind of, torture him, not exactly torture, but, to torment him. So Amar le, he says to him, my time at the Rav of Rav Yosef, what's the reason? It seems like this is a big quandary. Why would they permit such a thing? It's really disgusting. No one's going to use it for anything. Why on earth would they permit it? So Amar le, he immediately comes up with an answer. He says, he says, well, theoretically, you can use it. And this is what we talk about, broken utensils. They can always be used for something. What can they be used for? They could be used to cover something. You're missing a cover. You stick it on your utensil. Okay. So it's a pretty decent answer. Comes Rava and he says, but he has a retort to this. He says, Elam, Beata, if you're going to say that, but if you're going to say that the ability to use something as a cover for some utensil make something not muktzah, well, let's take rocks. I've mentioned that rocks are the highest level of muktzah. We call it muktzah machmad gufo, because it itself, it's the body of the item, is a useless thing. Rocks are totally useless unless you set them aside earlier. We saw about the rocks that they would prepare for using for the bathroom, for wiping themselves. If you set aside a rock, let's say, as to hold down your papers or something, you have it for a use, okay. But if your rock has no use, so we're going to say, well, any rock theoretically could function as a cover. It's actually probably better than something made out of naft. So, nafta. So basically, we're going to say that's not a good answer, because then you're going to basically say all rocks can be carried, and everybody knows that rocks can't be carried. But Rav Avia has another retort to this, and he's very smart and on the ball, and he says, Amarle, ha'ika torat kliale, hane leika torat kliale. You're comparing apples and oranges. A rock is not a utensil. So once it's not a utensil, you can't say, well, we can use it to cover a kli. It won't be muktzah because we can use it to cover a kli. It doesn't even come in the category of a utensil. However, the one that you use for this neft, that can actually, it was a kli. It's just that it was full of something that smelled horrible. But you can actually use it as a kli, and therefore, you can't bring a question from there because you're comparing apples and oranges only if it was called a kli before. Even if you did something that now makes it disgusting, still it was called a kli, and maybe you use it to cover your utensil, and that explains Rav and Rav Yosef. So, how is he going to prove this? Okay, before he proves this, I want to point out something very interesting. I don't know if you picked up on this, but if you notice, what did Rava do? Rava asked him a question, and what did Rav Avia do? He put his disgusting feet full of clay on Rava's bed. And Rava, when he responds to try to get him angry, he asks him a question about something that's disgusting and has a bad smell. So if you think about it, I think there's clearly a connection there. What to make of it is a good question. I understood it as Rava is trying to allude to the fact that to make it very clear why he's commenting on this. Bringing up something that's absolutely disgusting is a way of hinting to Rav Avia, do you know that what you did was absolutely disgusting, right? That, this smells terrible. You put your clay, dirty feet on my bed. That's really disgusting. And therefore, he asks a question, right? Of all questions of any halachic thing, obviously, we're thinking, it's obvious he asked that question because we're in the sugya of muktzah. But if you're not in the sugya of muktzah and learning all these things, right, you wonder why on earth of all the questions could have asked him to stump him on. Why this? I think there's an obvious connection. Anyway, what happens now? So Rav Avia comes and proves his point that there's a difference between something that's actually already a utensil versus something that was never a utensil to begin with. And he brings a case for something really interesting, which I'm just going to kind of pique your interest about, and I'm going to leave you in suspense till we get to the sixth parak of, I don't like to give everything away. I want you to see it when we get there in the sixth parak. But he springs up this braita. Milo Tanya, does it not say, hasherim v'hanizamim v'atabaot? Okay, these are different types of jewelry. Okay, here comes the thing we're going to have to look forward to in the sixth parak of Masechet Shabbat. Women are not allowed to wear jewelry. Okay, they're not allowed to walk out into Reshut HaRabim with jewelry. What's the concern? Well, the women often would show their jewelry to their friends, and therefore there was a concern that if you walked out with your jewelry, you would end up carrying it. So the rabbis came and said, not only can you not carry it in Reshut HaRabim, we're not even going to allow you to wear it in your house because you might walk out with your jewelry. Okay? The big obvious question I'm going to leave you in suspense about is, wait a minute, right? I'm sure you've all been, assuming most of you live in a place where there's an Eruv, even though maybe some of you don't, you've probably been to places without an Eruv, and you've probably never heard that, oh, you can't wear jewelry. So what's going on here, and how does it seem? It's actually an explicit Mishnah, and where on earth is it that we all wear jewelry? Okay, so I'm going to leave that as a question, especially because not only did they forbid it going on in Reshut HaRabim, they said you can't even wear it if there's an Eruv or you're in your house at all. So how is it we wear jewelry on Shabbat? Well, you'll have to wait to see then. It's one of very, very interesting sugya. Okay, we'll leave it as a question. Maybe you know it already, I don't know, but in case not, you'll be left in suspense. But anyway, he says, what does it say about these items? It says about these items that all these things, if you're wearing them, it's a problem. Like I can't walk out with earrings on or a necklace, but if I'm carrying the earrings in my hand the same way I would carry anything, then I can wear it in my own courtyard. Because if I'm in my own courtyard, the whole concern is if I wear it in my courtyard, like I normally wear it, I might walk out with it on and forget to take it off before I go out to Reshut HaRabim. But if I'm carrying it in my hand, then there's no concern about that, because then it's like anything else that's nitalim b'chatzir. The Amar Ula, and Ula said about this Braita, Matam, what's the reason? So he says, Ho'il v'ika torat kli alei. The reason is because it's called a utensil. In other words, jewelry is just like any utensil. So if I'm carrying it in my hand, the whole issue is only when I'm wearing it. But if I'm carrying it in my hand, it's not a problem. So therefore, he says, Hachanami ho'il v'ika torat kli alei. He proves from here the whole distinction that if something's called a kli, we can treat it as a kli, right? And we can say, oh, well, it's not usable for this, but it can be usable to cover something. But a rock can't be called that because it's not a kli at all. And here comes the clincher to the story. It's not exactly a clincher, but a summary line. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Baruch Rachmana de lo kasife Rav Rav Avia. Says, thank you, God, for giving Rav Avia the words to find an answer to Rav's question, and therefore preventing him from being embarrassed, which, by the way, shows that the story is siding on Rav Avia's side, even though really he stuck his feet on Rav's bed. On the other hand, right, so that's disrespectful and he shouldn't have done it. However, I think what he's being critical is the way that Rava tried to teach him a lesson was not exactly the nicest way, and in fact, Rav Avia comes out on top in this story. Now we're going to bring up a few contradictions between sources, different sources about Rabbi Shimon's opinion itself. So Rami le Abaye le Rava. Abaye brings up the following question to Rava. Tanya, it says in a bright, Motar shemen shebener v'shebaka'ara asur. The Rabbi Shimon matir. So if you have oil left, whatever's left after the candle burns out, what do we say? It's forbidden, but Rabbi Shimon says it's allowed. So Alma, the Rabbi Shimon late muktzah. Okay, this is a pretty obvious conclusion. We've been talking about this all along. From here, one can conclude that Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold muktzah. Ureminu, however, this contradicts another source, which says, okay, now we're going to move to Bechorot. Okay, what is Bechor? We need some background. Bechor is your firstborn animal, has to be given to the Kohen, to the priest. The priest, what does he do with it? He sacrifices it and then can eat the meat, other than the parts that have to be burned on the altar. But if the Bechor ends up with a mum, some sort of blemish, and it has to be a blemish, number one, it has to have fallen there by itself and not that you put the mum, right? You inflict a blemish, because otherwise the Kohanim will end up just inflicting blemishes to make it much easier for them so they don't have to go and sacrifice it in the temple. Right? It's much easier if you could just slaughter the animal yourself or bring it to the local shochet. The second thing is when it gets a blemish, it has to be a blemish that is not going to pass. If it's a blemish, like a little wound that'll go away, well, that also doesn't work. And the third thing is you have to bring it to a chacham to determine what type of mum this is and if this is a mum that permits it. So now, where does muktzah come in? Well, we'll see right now. Rabbi Shimon Omer, kol she'ein mumo nikal me'erev Yom Tov, ein ze min hamuchan. Okay, before I explain this, let's just say, it's Yom Tov, and you're a kohen, you have an animal, a bechor in your possession that someone gave you. It gets a blemish on Yom Tov. So you want to slaughter this animal now because you can eat it, and it's Yom Tov and you're allowed to slaughter in order to eat. So what does Rabbi Shimon say? If you didn't know that the moon wasn't noticeable from the day before, then you're not allowed to slaughter it, because this is what we call Eino Min HaMuchan. Before Yantif started, you assumed there was no way you were going to eat this animal because you had to bring it to the temple. You weren't bringing it to the temple, right? You wouldn't be, this isn't the kind of thing that you're allowed to slaughter on Yantif in the temple. The temple, you can only do sacrifices that are relevant for that day. So, therefore, Ein Zeh Min HaMuchan. So what do you see here? Rabbi Shimon holds muktzah again, right? This is another muktzah case. So that's the question that Abaye asked Rabbi. So Rabbi answers, Hachi Hashta, you're comparing two different things. The oil that's left in the lamp is not the same as the bechor that you didn't plan to slaughter from before Yantif. Why? Hatam Adam Yoshevu Mitzapeh Imatay Tichbeh Niro. Like a watch pot never boils. You imagine, the person sitting there, sounds like he's sitting there waiting for the oil to burn out. He's not exactly sitting there. The point is that he knows when Yantif starts, or Shabbos actually, he knows that when Shabbat starts, because Yantif anyway, it's mutar, because the whole thing is allowed on Yantif, lighting candles. But he's basically sitting there waiting and wondering, right? He knows from the beginning that eventually it's going to burn out and he'll be able to use it on Shabbat. So therefore, that's that. But Hacha, Adam Yoshevu Mitzapeh Matay Yipol B'mum, you think that Kohen is sitting wondering, oh, maybe today it'll get a blemish? And it's going to now give 3 reasons or 3 stages that would have to happen to allow this. And because there's so many stages, there's no way that the person sitting there thinking, oh, maybe I'll get lucky and it'll get a blemish on Yantif and I'll be able to eat it tomorrow, right, when Yantif starts. So Meimar Amar, the person who owns this bechor now, will say, number one, is there really going to be a mum? In other words, what's the likelihood? This is kind of a probability game. What's the likelihood that this animal will be blemished? And if you're going to say, well, randomly tomorrow, on Yantif, it's going to end up with a blemish, who's to say that the mum is going to be a permanent one? Now, only permanent ones are permit the animal. And even if you're going to say it will have a blemish that's permanent, how do I know? I'm going to find a rabbi, a chacham who's available and will answer my question on Yantif, and then I can slaughter it. In other words, there's so many stages you have to go through that it's unlikely. Mativ Rami Barchama. Rami Barchama now asks a question for the following Mishnah. He says, but wait, it says in the Mishnah, Mitirim Nidarim b'Shabbat. Okay, what's Haparat Nidarim? This is when a woman takes a vow. So we're going to get to all this, and we'll discuss it more in detail when we get there in Nidarim. Okay, today we're having sneak previews to all sorts of things that are to come. So a husband can annul the vows of his wife, or a father can annul the vows of his daughter. So you can do that even on Shabbat. In other words, let's say she says, I'll get to the second line in a minute. Sheilat Nidarim is when you make your own vow. Let's say a man makes a vow and he wants to go to a chacham to say, well, I changed my mind, I don't really want to do this vow. So both these things are allowed, but we're going to focus right now on the first one. If it's for the purposes of Shabbat, you can do it on Shabbat. So for example, let's say she says, I won't eat challah. Swear, right? She's dieting, I'm not going to eat challah. Her husband can go, if it's with Tzarech Shabbat, so she can eat bread on Shabbat, so he can cancel that on Shabbat. V'amai, lema, why would you be allowed to do that? Theoretically, she said that bread is muktzah, right? I'm not planning to eat that bread because before, right, she said already, all bread is forbidden to me. Here you see, by the way, something very interesting, that muktzah could be subjective. Something can be muktzah to me, even if it's not muktzah to you, right? A family might be eating the bread, but she said the bread's not, right? I'm not going to have anything to do with that bread all Shabbat, right? So I'm not eating bread. So, number one, mi emerdim is dakik laba'al, right? So now they say, who's to say, right, that her husband's going to decide to do the haparat nidarim on Shabbat, and therefore you should say that theoretically she put it out of her mind, it's set aside for its muktzah. So the answer, right, if you're going to say with the bechor that he wasn't expecting to eat it, you could say likewise with the woman, she wasn't expecting to eat the bread. So the answer could be Rav Pinchas Mishmei de Rava. The Amar Rav Pinchas Mishmei de Rava, kol hanoderet al da'at ba'ala hi noderet. Now, she knows when she takes a vow that her husband can very likely cancel it. So she never takes her vows super seriously because she knows that it might be canceled. So therefore, she didn't exactly put the bread 100% out of her mind because she knew that maybe her husband will cancel her vow. But now they say, well, wait, look at the second part. Tashma nishalim l'nidarim shel tzarech haShabbat b'Shabbat. But a man can go, we don't have that issue, oh, well, he knows anyone can cancel his neder. He can go to a chacham to annul his vow on Shabbat. V'amai, lema mi yemar demizdakik lechacham. You could say, just like we said in the Bechor case, he doesn't necessarily know he's going to find someone who's free and available to annul his vow. Also, the issue with the blemish that will determine that it's a blemish. Likewise here, he doesn't know he's going to find a chacham who's going to be willing to matir his neder, right? The rabbis might be all busy with their families and not available on Shabbat. So what do we answer? No, because hatan ilom izdakik lechacham sadyale begimel hedyotot. When it comes to the Bechor, you have to have a chacham determined. You can't just have anybody. But when it comes to a vow, we do this all the time in Hatarat Nedarim. There's three, you can find any random 3 people and they can annul your vow. So therefore, it's very easy to do. And therefore, again, it's not fully set aside before because he knows that at any point he wants, he can annul this vow. Okay, so therefore, the vows have nothing to do with this issue, and we could still say it by Bechor. So again, we're going to say, generally, Rabbi Shimon doesn't know muktzah, but in this case, because it's so unlikely that he thought he would ever have a chance to eat this Bechor on Yom Tov, he really did put it out of his mind. And it's like Rabbi Shimon said about the grogrod and simukim, for example. Now we have another question, contradiction in Rabbi Yosef, in Rabbi Shimon. So Abai asked Rabbi Yosef the following question. Mi amar Rabbi Shimon, kavta mutar l'taltala, kavta im, lo kavta lo. Did Rabbi Shimon really say, right, what did he say? Once it goes out, you're allowed to carry it. But that implies, while it's still lit, you can't. Now, this goes back to a question I raised at the very beginning, if you remember. My time, well, what's the reason? Why doesn't he allow you to carry it? What did we assume? Dilma, when we learned the Mishnah, we said this must be the reason, even though then later they gave other reasons. Dilma, bahadi dinakit la kafta, because maybe while you're carrying it, he might extinguish it, right? What's the problem with that? We said this then, which is Hashamina leila Rabbi Shimon damar davar she'eino mitkavin mutal. But doesn't Rabbi Shimon say it's a davar she'eino mitkavin is mutal? If I'm carrying this candle because I want to move it for whatever reason, this lamp, and it accidentally goes out, according to Rabbi Shimon, I'm not obligated. Why am I not obligated? Because that's what we call davar she'eino mitkavin. So it shouldn't be a problem. So basically, he says, Titania, as we know, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Gorev Hadam, he's saying, Mitav Safsala B'vat Shalei Tkaven Lasot Charitz. So now we're stuck with a big problem. If the whole reason Rabbi Shimon doesn't allow you to carry it when it's still lit is because you might come to extinguish it, well then that doesn't fit with Rabbi Shimon's whole approach to Davar She'eino Mitkavin. Everybody follows that? Because in the end, you're basically saying, you might come to blow it out, but who cares if you extinguish it? That wasn't your intent. You were trying to carry the lamp from one place to another for whatever reason, but not because you were trying to extinguish it. And Rabbi Shimon actually permits it entirely if it's mitkavin. So we have a big problem. So the Gemara is going to give a very odd answer, which is going to basically raise a lot of questions about davar she'eino mitkavin. We're going to reject this though, so don't worry. But he says like this, the Gemara. Rav Yosef answers and says, Kol hecha dechi mechaven ika isura deoraita ki lo mechaven gazer Rabbi Shimon midrabanan. It says like this. Rabbi Shimon distinguishes in davar she'eino mitkavin. We've said until now davar she'eino mitkavin is mutar according to Rabbi Shimon. It's only mutar if you had intended to actually do it. It was a derabanan thing that you intended. But if it's deoraita, in other words, what he's going to say is davar she'eino mitkavin drops at a level. If what you were going to do is asur midoraita, then it's going to be forbidden midoraban. If what you were going to do is derabanan, then we're going to permit it. Okay? So he says like this. If you would have extinguished it, it would have been deoraita. So therefore, it's derabanan and you still can't do it. And that's why he doesn't allow you to move this candle, because you might extinguish it. Well, that's derabanan. It's a little bit of a tricky thing for a few reasons. Number one, okay, so what about gorer adam kisei mitav safsal? You're going to still dig a ditch. Digging a ditch is also doraita. So they're saying, no, Rashi explains it's kila achar yad. You don't generally dig a ditch by dragging a bench on the ground. So that makes sense. But Tosafot raises the obvious question, which is, even in extinguishing in this manner, we already said it's a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. You're not doing it for the reason they did it in the Mishkan. And according to Rabbi Shimon, Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is D'Rabbanan. So it's only a D'Rabbanan. So basically, this whole theory doesn't really hold water. And the Gemara is not going to reject it for that reason, but the Gemara is going to reject it for a different reason. And Tosfos says, well, they're going to reject it anyway, but that really is a good question on this opinion. Some people say, and as the answer given is, well, even though it's Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, the general category of kiboy is a doraita, and we don't distinguish. Okay, but again, it's a little weak because the charitz also is digging a ditch, but maybe because, again, you're doing it in a non-normal manner. Okay, so anyway, that's a suggestion, but ki lo mechavin, right, the ki mechavin, ika isura d'Rabbanan, we're 4 lines from the bottom now, if you would intend and you would be over on isura d'Rabbanan, ki lo mechavin Rabbi Shimon lechatchila, right, then, ki lo mechavin shari Rabbi Shimon lechatchila. If you didn't intend, then Rabbi Shimon would permit it lechatchila. But this is going to be rejected immediately for a different reason. Mativ Rava, and if you remember, we learned this case, mochreik su. This is an issue of kilayim. If you sell clothing to non-Jews and you sell clothing that has flax, linen, and wool mixed together, mochrein kedarkan, you can sell them normally, meaning you can put them on in order to show off your clothing. Ubevad shelo yitkavem b'chama mipnei hachama, b'gshamim mipnei hagshami, as long as you don't intend in the summer months to protect you from the heat and in the winter months to protect you from the rain. Batznuim avshilim b'makel lacholihem. And then the best thing to do is really just hold it on a stick, but it's really okay. Here, Rabbi Shimon allows us lechatchila, even though, theoretically, if you would have intended, you'd be over on Isur D'Oraita, Shatnes. So therefore, we reject this answer, and we're going to have to explain. I'll just read the last line. El Amarava, Hanach Lener Shemen Uktila. They say the reason Rabbi Shimon forbids this has nothing to do with we're worried you're going to come to extinguish it, because really he does not have a problem with extinguishing because he thinks that's never shamed with coven and it's allowed. His reason is that this candle, this lamp, became a basis l'davar ha'asur. While it's lit, it's serving something that's forbidden, and that's why it's asur, which again adds another category of muktzah to our list of Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't hold muktzah, all of a sudden would hold muktzah if it's a basis l'davar ha'asur. Okay, we'll end here. We'll pick up with this tomorrow.